BJ, it's officially past the halfway point of the NFL regular season. We have just broached the trade deadline. There's plenty of news, a couple of big movements that we're going to talk about as we go through our big game breakdown. For those of you who do not know us, we are Statletics. We love talking through some of the bigger games on the weekly slate, talk about it from a statistical perspective, break down what our model projects for each game, and try and decipher and discern what the numbers tell us and talk about each one of those games. So I appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us. We have about 5 or 6 games that we want to talk about in detail, and then we will try to cover the rest of the slate as we go. But before we do that, BJ, how we doing, brother?
Good, man. Midway through the season, there's a bunch of question marks we had as some teams are kind of unfolding, so we're getting to know these teams a little bit better as we go on, and it's half over, which is sad, but here we are, and we got plenty of ball left, and excited to watch it.
Yeah, I know. It's quite polarizing how the season is shaped up comparative to how not only how we anticipated it turning out, but how everybody did. There are teams that we never thought would have a shot at the playoffs in a million years coming into this season who
Commanders
are leading their divisions, and then quite the opposite. You have teams like the Cowboys who are crumbling at the seams. So there's a lot of excitement, and then as we have crossed the regular season, the halfway point of the regular season, there's many teams that are at 500 or around 500, and there's going to be a lot of competitiveness in the divisions, and a lot of regular season games are going to feel like playoff games due to the implications. So we're starting to get there. It's going to be a lot of fun. But rolling through some of the big trades before we talk through the big games, BJ. Mike Williams to the Steelers. I thought that was a big pickup. Now that they're expanding the passing game, now that they have Russell Wilson, who kind of, definitely looks a lot better version of himself than what we saw at the Broncos, more of a Seattle Seahawks Russ Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Steelers are your boys. Real quick, what are your thoughts on the Mike Williams trade? Do you think he'll be an impact player? Start immediately, or is it going to take some time?
Yeah, it's hard to tell how much he'll impact the team in total. With an Arthur Smith run offense, it's typically a one wide receiver show, which would be George Pickens, but they have been expanding it a little bit, and they have pretty much no name wide receivers after George Pickens. So it definitely didn't hurt to have him, as long as he can do what he does best, which is make those big time catches. So I'm excited about it. I think that Steelers are a playoff contender, or a Super Bowl contender, as we'll be bold here today.
Okay.
And
right.
So yeah, I really they got a good shot to go deep in this thing.
Yeah, BJ's got to step up for his team. So
that's right.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet, but I think they're a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender. That's a little steep, but okay. Marshawn Lattimore traded over to the Commanders via the Saints' 3rd round pick. I think that was a huge pickup for the Commanders because it at least tells us they're absolutely serious about making a push in the playoffs. They're absolutely contenders without a doubt. The way that Jaden Daniels is playing, the way that Cliff Kingsbury is calling this offense, and the way that the Commanders' defense has shaped up from the start of this season to the end of this, or to the midway point. I mean, statistically speaking, they have really shaped up their advanced metrics. They have really performed on the defensive side of the ball, relatively speaking, to how they were performing at the end of last season and at the beginning of this season. They really didn't have that great defensive performances at the end of this last year and at the beginning of this year, but now they're buckling down. Dan Quinn has this defense humming, so big pickup for them. I also wanted to take a moment to slander the Dallas Cowboys, as we usually do in this show. Until they fire Mike McCarthy, until they get rid of Jerry Jones, they are an unserious franchise. So trading Jonathan Mingo for a 4th round pick is absurd. We have data points on him. He's played a full season. At this point, what are you doing? You know what you have in Jonathan Mingo. I mean, I get it. He was on the Panthers. It's hard to truly shine on the Panthers, but look at Deontay Johnson had some big games in his short stint there. Adam Thielen had some big games in his stint there. Jonathan Mingo, a 4th round pick, really? And you are like under 500. You just lost your quarterback for the year. You are essentially no shot to make the playoffs, especially in the division that you're playing in. What are you doing? You need those draft picks, and you're going to waste it on a guy that we already have film on who is mediocre at best, really. So that's my tangent. That's my rant. I apologize, but absolute malpractice by the Cowboys front office in all facets. So
Yeah. No, I agree from what we've seen so far. I mean, you got to give the guy a chance. Change of scenery, okay?
Sure.
Got to give the guy a chance. But
okay,
I feel like the Cowboys aren't willing to accept that they're in rebuild mode. And so they're still going to try to be like kind of win now mode, but they're just never going to, nothing's ever going to come out to anything positive doing that. So
dude,
it's
insane.
pretty bad.
Yeah, that's just bad awareness.
It's pretty bad.
Zadarius Smith, huge pickup for the Lions. They needed a pass rusher to come in and have an immediate impact after losing Aiden Hutchinson earlier in this year. I think that's a big pickup. Not only will it be a big pickup on the field, but it'll also be a big pickup for the locker room. I think he'll fit right in with this Detroit Lions culture. He had a couple massive seasons in Green Bay. So I think he'll have an immediate impact. Tre'Davious White was the last one I wanted to throw out there over at the Ravens to try and clean up the piss poor secondary that they've been trotting out there over the past few weeks. They also have a few guys getting healthy on top of acquiring Tre'Davious White. So I expect the Ravens to pick up some of their passing game defense a little bit more, a little bit better than what they have been, but just of note. So, BJ, biggest games on the slate. Got to start with the Ravens. Speaking of the Ravens, Bengals are still in somewhat of a do or die mode as they travel over to Baltimore. The Ravens just smoked the Broncos. Absolutely torched the Broncos. There was even some discussion about that game that like, hey, this is Bo Nix's breakout game. Take advantage of a bad secondary. He can really, elevate himself and like put his stamp on the game here. But oh my gosh, the Ravens showed up, showed out. Lamar Jackson is playing significantly better than how he played last year. And we know how last year turned out. That was an MVP season. So I think Lamar Jackson is playing at his highest point in his career as the Bengals travel to Baltimore to play the Ravens. Bengals need a win, coming off of a big win against the Raiders last week. Beej, how important do you think this game in a division like this that is as tough as this? Basically a do or die game for the Bengals as they try and make a push for the playoffs. With the rough start that they've had this year, how important do you think this game is? How much chips do you think they're going to push into the table here?
Yeah, I think it's really important for both teams midway through the season. Plus, they have the Steelers on the Ravens side. The Steelers are 7-2 in the same division.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, one of the teams has to be a wild card team. So I think it's very important for both sides. The Ravens are tearing teams to shreds. They've scored over 40 points in like 3 of the last 5 games, which is just insane. It doesn't really matter who they're playing. They're just destroying them. Deontay Johnson is coming in and being more equipped with the offense. Got the big dog. He's going to eat. So
big dog. It's
really a masterclass what they're doing on offense from where they started 0-2 and just like looking awful at the beginning of the season. From the Bengals side, they got to win this game. I don't know what T. Higgins is doing. He's, just on the bench for the ride, I guess. He doesn't want to play football. And even though you can expose the Ravens secondary, it's kind of hard to do if just like one guy being Jamar Chase. So I don't really know. I think it's very important for both sides. I think the Ravens need it. They need to win this game.
Both teams desperately need it.
They both need it.
I agree
Only one
with
gets
you.
it.
And the Ravens would have a cushion here, but to your point, the Steelers are sitting atop of this division kind of comfortably, with the Ravens right there on their tail. But the Bengals are 4-5, the Ravens are 6-3, the Steelers are 7-2. So this is honestly this is kind of where we're getting in that territory. Like, hey, this game it's not just your typical regular season game. Bengals coming into this game as a 6-point underdog as they travel to Baltimore to face off against the Ravens. The Ravens are dominant at home. They've been dominant on the offensive side of the ball. You look at the Baltimore offense, second overall in EPA per play, fourth overall in success rate. Pivot to the Cincinnati defense that has definitely not even been close to what we expected. 27th overall in EPA per play allowed, 31st overall in success rate allowed on the defensive side of the ball. Baltimore offense is first overall in rushing yards per game, first overall in rushing yards per attempt, second overall in passing yards per attempt, and they are first in the league in yards per play. You look over at the Bengals. The Bengals are 28th overall in rushing yards per game. Big Dog will eat. To your point, absolutely. So I think that's where we kind of get into this troublesome area. Like, hey, there's really no rhyme or reason to stopping this offense, because you either make an effort to stop Derrick Henry, and then you have to suffer with Lamar Jackson's arm. You make an effort to stop Lamar Jackson's arm in the passing game, and then you have to suffer the consequences with the Big Dog. So it's really going to kind of show up to like what kind of like explosive plays on the defensive side of the ball can the Bengals generate? Can they force turnovers? Can they get the ball out of the Big Dog's hands? Can they pick off Lamar Jackson once or twice here and there? That's going to be so crucial to the Bengals, because just looking at it on paper, the Bengals defense isn't just going to stop the Ravens offense. So I'm looking for explosive plays. I'm looking for turnovers out of the Bengals. Now, what the Bengals can do is kind of play this game where they can make it an effort to play the Ravens game, kind of flip the tables a little bit. They can control the clock. They can hog the ball. They can keep the Ravens offense off the field. The Ravens defense is not what they used to be in the Harbaugh era. So if we look at the Baltimore defense, man, they're 26th overall in EPA per play allowed and 15th overall in success rate allowed. Cincinnati offense, 4th overall in EPA per play, 7th overall in passing yards per game. And the Ravens, 32nd overall in passing yards per game. So when you look at Joe Burrow and the receiving core, I don't even think they'll have T. Higgins, but, Jamar Chase alone is good enough to hold this offense up. So if I'm the Bengals, my goal is control the clock, flip the tables, and basically do what the Ravens do to a bunch of other teams. And so now if they can do that, if they also can't generate any turnovers, I think this is easily the Ravens game. So how much of a chance do you think this Cincinnati's offense gives them in a game like this?
I think they definitely have the ability to put up a good amount of points. I mean, the score of the last game a couple of weeks ago is 41-38. So, I don't know we're going to get that high scoring again, but, the Bengals can definitely put it up. Joe Burrow had 5 touchdowns last week. So they definitely can. My feel on the game is the Ravens are in kill mode. They're in they're in destroy teams' souls mode right now. And so I think the Ravens are gonna be able to find a way, especially at home, because they played at Cincinnati earlier in the year.
The model projections, Scarlett, she likes this to be a high scoring game, totaled about 53, 54. But she has the Ravens as a 7-point spread, so about 1.5 more than what Vegas is showing. And to your point, man, I think the Ravens being at home, they're in kill mode. They're wanting the top of that division. They're licking their chops. They want a chance at Pittsburgh. They're not going to overlook this game. I think they are going to come in prepared. This offense is peaking, its top performance. And you pivot over. The Bengals are kind of struggling a little bit on the offensive side of the ball in terms of injuries and discipline. You have Jermaine Burton, who was out for disciplinary reasons. He apparently just doesn't give a shit. And T. Higgins, man, I don't know what's up with this guy. If I was the Bengals, I'd be fed up. I know he's been injured, but, if you can't be on the field, there's no point in having you. So if I was the Bengals, I was kind of surprised that they didn't trade him away. But it's kind of tough scenes for this Bengals. And I don't think their defense is going to be able to hold up like they need to against this, Ravens offense is arguably the best in the NFL. I do think this game is going to be close. I think the Bengals cover, but I think the Ravens prevail. It's going to be a fun one. I think there's going to be, some explosive plays here and there, but Ravens win in a tight one at home.
Normally on a Thursday night game, I would agree with you. but I think the Ravens splatter them.
Okay.
I think they splatter them. I
Yeah.
think it's like a couple years ago if like Alabama's playing Vanderbilt and they're tired of Georgia
Dude,
or they're
there's
tired of
something
LSU to go. You know what I'm saying?
there's
It's
something about
it's
being in prime time where big stars kind of show up. You have guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's like they're kind of meant for the spotlight, and they perform better when the pressure is on. When the world is watching. So you can make an argument for that too. I mean, that's totally
you
subjective.
could.
That's pulling out of my ass, but hey, just playing every angle here. All right, hey guys, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment your favorite picks. Let us know who you're taking this week, who you're not taking. We love screening the crowd for that picks. The show is also brought to you by Not Beer, American Sparkling Water. It is never a bad time to have Not Beer. We have some links in the chat. You can either find a store locator, buy it around you, or you can have it shipped directly to your door via Amazon. So, perfect drink. You can drink it outright, or you can mix it with whatever you want. Never a bad time for a Not Beer. Okay, BJ, I got a fun one for you. Lions go to Houston to play the Texans. The Texans are kind of coming off of the mini bye, played the Jets on Thursday night. They fell short in kind of what was an ugly game, but we know that they are missing some weapons. Looking to hopefully get some of those weapons back. Stephon Diggs, of course, out for the season. Nico Collins may be activated off of IR. His status is still up in the air, so we can kind of navigate around that over time. The Lions, as we just mentioned, they traded for Zadarius Smith. Their offense is firing. They just beat their divisional foe in the Packers. So vibes are high. This team is on fire on the offensive side of the ball, almost seemingly unstoppable. So, BJ, game, Lions travel to Houston as a 3.5-point road favorite. I have some numbers here. I have the model projections, but before I get into that, Texans, are you concerned about them at all? Or do you think this is a good spot for them to try and bounce back and prove to the world that they're still that team? What do you think?
I am concerned. I really am. I know the injury bug has bitten them pretty good, but I mean, CJ Stroud, against a Jets defense that hasn't performed like everyone thought they would. CJ Stroud had a bad game. I don't know what his completion percentage was. I think he only completed 11 passes or something like that. Granted, he only had Tank Dell and a bunch of random guys who I could beat probably. But I am very concerned about this team at this point. I really expected better things. I mean, what are they? 5-4, 6-3?
The Texans or
yeah, the Texans.
The Texans are
okay. Well, it looks good there, but I am concerned at this point, especially in this game facing the Lions, who can beat you in every way that they want to.
Yeah.
Literally any way they want, they can beat you, and their defense is shaping up and getting better. With Zadarius Smith, so I would be worried if I was a Texans fan in this game.
Yeah, here's the thing. My biggest concern with the Texans is their offensive line, mainly in pass protection. Right now, they are 24th overall in pressures allowed. That number looks a lot worse, because I filter out garbage time here. So, it could be worse. But if you watch on TV, there's really not a play where a passing play for the Texans where CJ Stroud's not looking like he's scrambling for his life. There's never a time, there's hardly a time where I watch a passing play and he's comfortable in the pocket. And so that is my biggest concern for this team. They're hemorrhaging pressure on passing plays. The line is now with Zadarius Smith coming over. That's a huge boost, but I have to say the Lions weren't exactly generating a ton of pressure. I mean, great defensive unit, but they're not like world beaters by any means. After they lost Aiden Hutchinson, he was kind of the sole generator of pressure. But now they have Zadarius Smith. We'll see. That is the biggest concern for me in this Houston Texans team. So watching this game, that's one thing I will be watching for. Even if they get Nico Collins back, Nico Collins will be a huge boost for this offense. But, if you want to have plays where he stretches the field, you got to have time. You got to have time. And so CJ Stroud is still capable of making big plays, especially outside of the pocket. So the offense will be there. But to what extent? That's my concern. And so I think this Detroit defense is also uber aggressive, and I wouldn't be surprised if they engaged it, every play. It's not a bad tactic. So Detroit offense, though, story of the year. I mean, my goodness, Jared Goff is playing at an MVP caliber right now. He is distributing the ball in a surgical way each game. Detroit offense, 3rd overall in EPA per play, 3rd overall in offensive success rate. If you pivot over to the Houston defense, they're 13th overall in EPA per play allowed, 7th overall in success rate allowed. So defense is there for the Texans. I'm not really concerned about the defense side of the ball. Will Anderson dodged a major injury, so he'll be back in play. Danielle Hunter is complimenting on the other side. They have Derek Stingley, one of the more robust corners. But it's almost like this Detroit offense is matchup proof. I mean, they are shredding teams. So we get to a point where it really is going to depend on the Houston offense. And can we be confident that they're going to generate any sort of production and be able to protect CJ Stroud in a game like this against the Lions, Beach? What's your take? Who do you think prevails?
I think the Lions prevail. I think they cover. I don't think that they're going to be able to give him time for that, like you were saying. I think the Lions and the Ravens are like probably the top 2 teams in like gameplay right now in the league, and they're just shredding people. So I don't think that the Texans offense is going to be able to keep up with Detroit.
Yeah, and that pressure that we were talking about too, the Houston offense it's there in a theoretical sense, but production wise, you look at what they've generated. They're 17th overall in EPA per play allowed, 26th overall in success rate allowed. So they're really generating more explosive plays, but they're not consistently doing it. So that's one thing that we're concerned about. They're not consistently, driving the ball. They're not consistently putting up plays that have 5-6 yards per play. They're 15th in the league in yards per play right now, so that makes sense. And so against this Lions defense, especially with the way Brian Branch has been playing as well, I mean, I have no reason to have any sort of confidence that the Texans are going to be able to do this. And one thing I wanted to also bring up are the model projections in this game as well. The model has the Lions as a 6-point favorite in this game against the Texans. So that kind of matches up and aligns with my concerns and my thoughts about this game. So I think the Lions continue to show their dominance, especially in prime time on the Sunday Night Football slate. If you were to take the Texans here, make your case, make your devil's advocate. What's your bull case for the Texans winning this game?
You can make that line secondary leaky again. I mean, quick throws.
Nico Collins being back.
Yeah, Nico Collins being back. It's going to be really difficult to stop the Lions.
Yeah.
So in order to, combat that, you have to generate more points on the offensive side for the Texans, which I just haven't seen. I think you need Nico back, and you need Nico back healthy to do that. We don't know how healthy he is at this point. I don't think it's very, very, very doable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need Nico back because if my game plan, I would kind of use the Lions game against themselves. Just feed Joe Mixon, ride him as much as I can, let him. He's absolutely dominating this year in the run game. So feed it to him and then leverage that play action game and stretch the field with Nico Collins where I can. So that's my game plan. If I'm trying to make a bull case for the Texans, they have the players to be able to do that. It's just, can this offensive line hold up and can they execute? So it's going to be a fun one, though. I am so glad that's a Sunday Night Football game. We're getting into there. So, okay. Hey, Beach, Steelers. Your Steelers take on the Red Hot Commanders. This game is Pittsburgh's traveling to Washington to play the Commanders. Like we mentioned, Commanders just acquired a brand new corner and Marshawn Lattimore for a 3rd-round pick. Steelers are coming off the bye, so they're feeling nice, rested. They also have a new weapon on the offensive side of the ball in Mike Williams. So Russell Wilson looks like he kind of injected some life into this offense. Not that Justin Fields wasn't doing fine, but there's a bit more of a spark. There's a bit more explosiveness in this offense now that Russell Wilson is at the helm. And then, of course, the Commanders. How can we not talk about this team? One of the most fun stories in the league is Jaden Daniels and the turnaround of this Commanders team. So lots of excitement here. This game has the chance to be an underrated offensive bout. I would never think I would say that in a game where Arthur Smith's calling the plays for one of the teams, but hey, here we are. Is what it is. But BJ, how confident are you in your Steelers to go into a game against the Commanders? How confident are you in the defense to be able to stop Jane Daniels and the Commanders? Do you have any sort of confidence? Are you feeling good about that, or are you kind of concerned?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned. I think that it's difficult to stop that offense with the horizontal raid and Jaden Daniels being able to use his legs as well. So I wouldn't be concerned. I think the players that the Steelers have on the defensive side are going to be able to match up decently well with the weapons that Jaden Daniels has. I think this kind of comes down to I think both teams are very good. I do think there'll be more points than we expect. I think it comes down to a more veteran team presence, like midway through the season in the Steelers versus a new head coach, a rookie quarterback, a lot of young guys on the Commanders, and just that experience alone, I think will have the Steelers prevail in the end. I know they're a 3-point dog, I think.
2.5 now.
Yeah, I do think that the Commanders offense is nearly close to matchup proof. And it's really fun to watch. And it's in Washington, right?
Yep, it's in Washington.
I do think that with the addition of Lattimore, I don't know how much he's going to play since they just acquired him this week. I don't know if it really holds a lot of substance this week, but without Lattimore, they're definitely susceptible to some big plays happening on the Steelers' offensive side. And I think Russ is going to be able to hit those guys. So I'm above 50% confident in the Steelers winning this game, but barely.
Okay. I have a very sharp take, not sharp, but piercing take that I think a lot of people are going to hate on me for here in a minute.
Don't pierce me.
The Commanders' offense, like you said, on paper, matchup proof. I mean, look at all the teams that they've played, and they've dominated. They are first overall in EPA per play in the league, fifth overall in offensive success rate, fifth overall in passing yards per attempt. They also are running the ball really well, and that's both a compliment to Brian Robinson and Jaden Daniels, fifth overall in rushing yards per game as well. So, Washington offense, dominant. But, Beach, let's take a look at who they played. Okay? Bear with me.
I'll bear.
First game of the season, they lost to Tampa Bay. Abysmal pass defense for Tampa Bay. Now, it was a little bit better, healthier, less banged up at that time when we started the season. So, we'll give them some credit. New York Giants. They beat the New York Giants week 2. They don't really have a defense to rave about. Cincinnati. We just talked about how bad Cincinnati's defense was, especially in the passing game and the running game. Taking advantage of a bad defense. That's what good offenses do. So credit to them. Arizona. Now, Arizona grades is a little bit better of a defense than what you would expect. It's middling, but not great. Okay. So they're not a bad defense, but they're not, they're not top tier either. So credit to them there. Jonathan Gannon's doing fine. Cleveland defense, not as good as they were last year, but fine. Okay. So kudos to them there for the Commanders. Baltimore's passing defense is awful this year. You can shred them right now. So they lost to Baltimore that week. That was week 6. They lost 30-23. So, hey, Baltimore's a tough team to beat regardless of how bad the defense is or not. Carolina Panthers, historically bad defense. Chicago Bears, good defense. Better than they have been, certainly. And then the Giants again. So, out of all of those games, we're looking at the fact that the best defense they faced were the Chicago Bears. Pretty bad. Or not bad, but pretty tough to kind of discern anything. And while Jaden Daniels is great, absolutely. I think He will undoubtedly be the offensive rookie of the year. And I think that this Washington offense, regardless of who they play, is going to play an elite level. But before we go tooting a bunch of horns, I just want to put it in perspective, the level of defense that these numbers that I'm reading out and the model projections are putting out as well. The model has the Commanders at 2.5, so right around where Vegas has it. I think the Steelers can come in and be the toughest defense that the Commanders have faced until this point and really rattle them.
Yep.
I think that TJ Watt will cause a ruckus. I think the Steelers secondary will make it really tough and you think about who they're working with outside of Terry McLaurin. It's not a whole lot. It's like Noah Brown and Diame, and then Luke McCaffrey. And so it's really hard to rush into the steel curtain as well. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think that the Commanders are frauds by any means, but I think this is the first elite defense that the Commanders have faced until this point, and I think it kind of shocks them a little bit. And so give me the Steelers here to go on the road and beat the Red Hot Commanders right now. I really, really think they can do it. Pittsburgh defense is 4th overall in EPA per play allowed, 11th overall in defensive success rate, which is offensive success rate allowed. They're 4th overall in rushing yards per game allowed. And I just do think that they're going to come off this bye week ready to rock and make a statement to the NFL that they are legit contenders. Beach.
Yep. Plus, they're off a bye week, too.
So, that's a big thing. I mean, especially for a coach like Tomlin, man.
Yeah.
He'll come ready to rock.
2 weeks to prepare. Yeah. He's ready to rock. He's business only.
So that'll be a fun one. I'm actually looking forward to that. So, okay. Hey, 49ers travel to the Bucs. 49ers coming off bye. They might have Christian McCaffrey. It's looking likely that they will. Debo will be back and healthy. Of course, they lost Brandon Ayuk. But I think this offense, relatively speaking, will be healthy outside of, Jordan Mason. Not sure what the status of him, but lose Jordan Mason, get McCaffrey back. Kind of a pretty good trade, if you ask me. Bucs are coming off of a tough loss against the Ravens. I really did think that they were going to beat them in overtime. It really speaks volume to the performance that Baker Mayfield is having this year. Loses his top 2 receivers and then goes out there and still, keeps up with the Chiefs and balls out. I say balls out. He didn't ball out in terms of points on the board, but in my opinion, he balled out against one of the best defenses in the NFL and the Chiefs. So kudos to him for playing that well. For the Bucs and the 49ers, they're kind of in the same spot here. They're hovering around 500. They really need wins, and they really need to start piling up wins because it's going to be tough for them to finish out their division. The Bucs are, a couple games behind the Falcons. The 49ers are in a really, really competitive division themselves, and so they got to pad the win column to try and get that wild card spot. So this is where a game like this comes into play. So, BJ, how worried are you about the 49ers and the rest of the season? Because it looks like they just haven't pieced it together. Do you think they're due for an eruption game on the offensive side of the ball? Or do you think they're going to kind of continue to persist with their struggles? What do you think?
It's really interesting. Just from what the season has shown so far, like none of their – I want you to talk on the defensive number side in a second because I'm interested to hear what those say. But, I mean, they haven't had any of their offensive weapons all together all season. At all. And even if you get, Ayuk's out, Kittle's out every other week, I feel like, or he's limited. McCaffrey's just now coming back. And, hopefully they can get Debo back if he gets over being sick. I would expect for when they get healthier to start having eruption spots, as long as their defense, which I don't know the numbers on. Share those. How's the defense?
Defense. We'll talk about the Tampa Bay defense really quick. Tampa Bay defense is nowhere near their performance of the past few years. We look at some of the advanced metrics, 16th overall in EPA per play allowed, 25th overall in success rate allowed. They are 28th in the league in passing yards per game. They give up on average around 270 passing yards per game. Definitely uncharacteristic of what we've seen out of the San Francisco defense. So
Was that San Francisco or was that Tampa Bay? You said Tampa Bay at the start.
Oh, yes. Sorry, that was Tampa Bay.
What's San Francisco look like?
San Francisco defense, 12th overall in EPA per play, 17th overall in success rate allowed. Same story. Not what we've seen out of the past few years. Mm-hmm. And so, Shanahan, these 49er defenses have, of the past few years, have always been top 10 in those columns. We look at what they're doing. They're 18th overall in passing yards per attempt. They're 16th overall in passing yards per game. They're pretty good at stopping the rush. They're still a top 10 unit in there, only allowing 101 rushing yards per game. That San Francisco defense is. But the offensive side of the ball, the metrics look good. The numbers look good. However, they have some very, very inopportune turnovers, and they really can't piece a lot of these like plays together to kind of capitalize and score. And part of it I think comes with what you were saying about not having everybody there at once on the field, like a chemistry thing maybe. But we look at the 49ers offense, man, 6th overall in EPA per play, 8th overall in success rate. Brock Purdy is averaging around 270 passing yards per game, 3rd overall in passing yards per attempt at 8.37, and the offense as a whole is 3rd in the league in yards per play. So offense is there. They just have to piece it together. So I think Christian McCaffrey coming back is huge, and I think playing against a Buccaneers secondary that is, hemorrhaged yards in the passing game is a potential get-right spot. Now, do they capitalize? Beach? What do you think?
I think that capitalizing will come as long as the process is right, which I'm assuming it is with Shanahan. In this game, I hope they can. It's hard to tell when this team will actually turn around and start capitalizing on these plays. It's really, it's pretty much impossible to predict. But as they get healthier, I feel like they will and make a late season surge. But in this particular game, I mean, Baker is playing out of his mind for Tampa Bay, and he is carrying this team, and he really just shouldn't be. He almost handed the Chiefs their first loss of the season, took them to overtime. So I've got Tampa Bay to keep this game close. I did think the 49ers will win, but I've got Tampa keeping this game really close.
Yeah, and to your point, that's what Scarlett sees, man. Scarlett sees this as a 26-24 game, 27-25. So right there with you, man. The spread right now is 49ers coming in on the road as 5.5-point road favorites. But to your point, dude, Baker Mayfield is a team elevator right now. He's playing out of his mind. He's elevating his playmakers. This offensive line is, certainly doing their part in helping protect Baker. And so, to your point, I think that this Buccaneers team is too competitive. We watch Baker and we know the type of player he is. He's always fired up, ready to go, and ready to perform on the big stage, especially these past 2 years. And so I think Baker Mayfield's going to bring it. I do think the 49ers prevail. I think they win. I think it's one of those things where the 49ers offense, has some big plays. They maybe get up a little bit, but, Kyle Shanahan does his thing. He lets the team get back into it late in the fourth quarter. So I do think the 49ers win, but I would not be surprised if the Buccaneers were right on their tails the whole way there. So
I also want to say, great call last week on you saying you think the Bucs were going to upset the Chiefs. That's the only thing I was thinking about. It's the only thing I was thinking about when that game was going on.
Thank you. The line was too crazy. It was like
great call.
9.5. What are we talking about? This game is at home for the Bucs. Baker Mayfield shows up to every game, and it's not like the Chiefs' offense has been world beaters. So I just thought that was crazy. But anyway, heartbreaker. Thought they were going to win, but Chiefs do their thing. Speaking of the Chiefs, Broncos travel to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. I want to talk about this game because it's another divisional game. Now we know the Chiefs kind of have a stronghold on this division. It's going to be virtually impossible for anybody to kind of catch them in this division, but big implications nonetheless for both teams as the Broncos are fighting for a wild card spot and the Chiefs are looking to secure the 1 seed in the AFC. So Chiefs are 8-point home favorites after the Broncos got routed last week by the Ravens. Do you have any confidence of them going into Arrowhead and keeping this competitive?
I first would like to apologize for for my actions last week,
Yeah.
saying that the Broncos were going to cover the 9.5 with the Ravens. That's on me. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This team, the Broncos are really young, and they just got completely obliterated. And you look at high spreads in the NFL, and you're like, oh well, a lot of games are really close. Well, even though the Chiefs haven't been blowing teams out of the water, and even though this is a really high spread at 8, I believe the Chiefs are going to cover this. I don't give any confidence towards the Broncos at all. I still think this is a team building year for them, and they're making a lot of progress with Bo Nix, but they still have a couple years to where they can actually compete with the big boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No. I'll put it this way. So I think that if the Chiefs did not trade for DeAndre Hopkins, I think the Broncos would have a chance. And as crazy as that sounds, as crazy as one player sounds, when you look at this Chiefs offense, especially watching the game against the Bucs last week, they're trying to generate explosive plays. They don't have that guy anymore they can dump it off to and just go generate yards in the passing game like Rashee Rice did. You dumped it off to him on a slant route, and he could take it for 30 plus. He was just that guy. He was a great power slot, but they're missing that kind of guy to kind of, Travis Kelce, he's a great, technician, a great route runner, but he's not going to go break off a bunch of tackles anymore. We kind of see him deteriorating. His age is kind of catching up to him. Xavier Worthy is just not there yet. We saw some piss poor route running. The Chiefs offense can't trust him right now to be that guy to bank on making an explosive play here and there. They want to so desperately bad. And before the DeAndre Hopkins situation, before he got settled in this offense, the Chiefs just struggled to generate explosive plays. And so no matter how well the Chiefs offense were doing, they were just chunking out plays, one at a time. So games were always going to be relatively close, even if it felt like the Chiefs were dominating on the offensive side of the ball. Now that they have DeAndre, they have a guy that can stretch the field a little bit, or a guy that you're going to have to back up the secondary a little bit. You're going to have to play those two high safeties. You're going to have to not press against the wide receivers anymore. So I think DeAndre Hopkins has a curveball in the Chiefs offense where they can now generate an explosive play or two and kind of bank on him being that guy to catch a contested catch or, stretch the field a little bit. And so with that being said, I do think the Chiefs can actually have higher margin of victories compared to what they have been doing over the past couple of weeks. The Broncos, I think they're almost there, but I just don't think I fully trust Bo Nix yet with the weapons that he has. He's got some bums, dude. I want to give him some credit. He's playing really well. But when you have guys like Troy Franklin dropping balls left and right, and Cortland Sutton, who's he's really a specialist in one area of the receiving game and contested catches, but teams know that, and there's no way that you could just solely try and do that every single play. They need more playmakers. They need more guys on the field to help out Bo Nix. And so until they can do that, I don't think they're going to be able to, to beat a team like the Chiefs, especially in Arrowhead. However, the model has this as a 6-point game for the Chiefs. And that's on the prerogative that the Chiefs are going to slow this game down. They're going to run the ball like they have been doing. And they're just going to play the same game that they have been playing. Very, very short yard per play outcome. Running game, hammering Kareem Hunt into the ground. And
he's going to die out there.
Low passes to Kelce. But I think the narrative flips. I think they start stretching the field with DeAndre a little bit. Hopefully Xavier Worthy can finally, get his head out of ass. But not sure it's looking likely. But I think this Chiefs offense, they ramp it up a little bit now that DeAndre is comfortable. What do you think?
Two things. One, the Broncos just need a wide receiver who can get open. That's obvious, right? Every team needs one of those. They just need a separation specialist like myself. That's what they need. Let's get one of me out there. The second thing I have is the Chiefs are going to win again. They're going to win it all again.
They can't.
They're going to win it all again.
They can't get away with this.
They're going to win it all again. I'm just
sad.
Yeah.
Is what it is, though.
Yeah. But no, I do think I agree with your point with them having a little bit of a scheme change with Hopkins. So it's fun to watch, but we don't wanted to be the team in red.
Yeah. There were plenty of other games that we want to talk to you guys about. However, we are up with time. So we appreciate you coming to listen to our big game breakdowns. We appreciate you guys. We will all be back here next week with week 11. And of course, we're gearing up for the beloved playoffs. So we'll always have a video for each playoff game. That's our favorite time of the year. It's our Christmas. So we appreciate you guys. And we'll be back here next week.